My name is Jonathan Gillum.
And this is The Experts. This is Jonathan Gillum, and this is The Experts on Facebook Live, Twitter, and YouTube. And tonight, I did a little experiment on you. I started the show on YouTube and Facebook with the regular countdown, but on YouTube and Twitter. But on Facebook, I only did 15 seconds in advance. I want to see how quickly this climbs, and perhaps, maybe, we'll be able to cut down the length of the intro. I know a couple of people have complained about that, so I figured I'd experiment with that just a little bit. Mainly, I want to see how it works on Facebook, so you all let me know if you were notified, and then if you weren't, we'll see how this progresses, and as people add on, and as the numbers, I'm monitoring the numbers right now. Also, if you haven't shared the show, make sure you share it on Facebook and retweet it on Twitter. If you haven't subscribed to YouTube, go subscribe to it. Tell everybody about it. And we're going to get started with a news review today. That's basically what we're going to do today. Let's get started. How many of you are prepared for an incident like this? Get my new book, Sheep No More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival, and I will teach you to think like an attacker so you can truly defend yourself. Don't just react, act. Available for pre-order now on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Sheep No More. Get it. As you see, I was a little preoccupied with sharing this show. Forgot to hit the button, but we're moving forward now. So, technical difficulties. I got to be, today was a very interesting experience. I was Bill O'Reilly's first guest in studio. He did his show, his podcast from the studio set today, and I was his first guest that he had on. Great honor, and it was awesome being on there with him. That guy has a presence like just nobody else. I mean, when he walks into a building or a room, people know that he's there. I mean, for one thing, I don't know, he's like 6'7" or 6'5", something like that. So it's pretty incredible. Let me see, somebody's texting me there, make sure that everybody can hear me. Okay, they can. And so it was a very interesting experience being on there with him. I'm going to try to get him on this show. We'll see. We can always wish and see if we can get him on here. But it was very interesting. We talked a lot about the same stuff that we talked about on last night's show here on there. And he hit on some things that I'm going to talk about tonight, which is this immediately, and I'm sharing. I've got all my Facebook and stuff up here. If you haven't shared yet, make sure that you're sharing it. But the gun control stuff, they're already going after that. We know, it happens every single time there's a mass shooting. They go after the guns and they want to do gun control. But they can't argue with statistics and the fact that half the country is never going to give up their weapons. And I don't hate to tell them, but the left should realize that they're saying Generation Z, which I find that very interesting, that it's Generation Z is the next generation. It's actually more conservative than Generation X by far. Now, I don't know how people have gotten these statistics, but if that's true, that's a great thing. That's going to be a great thing for us. And so we'll see. We'll see exactly how that comes. But my whole point of bringing that up is that it's going to be more difficult, I think, in the future, if Generation Z is actually more conservative, that they will be more difficult to manipulate, and they will it's going to be a more conservative gun-friendly youth in this country. I hope that's the way it goes. I've heard several people talk about that. But, you know, in the title of the tonight's show, I'm pointing at my computer right here. What I wrote is, so we're going to talk about the developments in the Las Vegas attack. But I got to say, Jimmy Kimmel, who I've been a fan of Jimmy Kimmel's humor for a long time. I think he's a funny guy, and I think he's a pretty good interviewer. But he's becoming bigger and bigger of, I mean, look, he's becoming like the liberal Glenn Beck, where he cries about a lot of stuff. Not to put Glenn Beck down. I mean, Lord knows I'm emotional as anybody. I get teared up when, you know, certain those 30 for 30 on ESPN, I'll get tears, you know, the way they do that show. I'm an emotional guy. I wear my heart on my sleeve. I've always been like that, especially if I get angry. But Jimmy Kimmel coming out, and first it was the healthcare issue and the fact that he has a child that has a precondition, I think it's a heart issue. I understand his frustration. And in fact, when I was watching that, I agree with him by and large with you can't trust Congress, you can't trust the Senate, you can't trust the Republican or the Democratic establishment individuals. And I agreed with him on that. And I understood his emotions. It made sense. But this guy cries about everything now. And then, even with the health care issue, he had to bring up Trump. And as though, you know, Trump, who's only been in office for 8 months as president of the United States, these congressmen, these senators, some have been in there for 30 years. And Obamacare was around for 7 years, and they didn't do anything about it. They didn't have something to give the president when he first came on board, right? They didn't do anything like that. It's not like, you know, any of these knucklehead senators or congressmen that are Republicans, and I'm a conservative person, but how can I agree with them? They didn't have, like, immediately they were talking about Obamacare is, oh, it's disastrous, it's this, it's that. They didn't do anything. They didn't have any solution for the American public. I think, to begin with, this is a little off the subject what I was going to talk about tonight, but healthcare and the healthcare industry is such a major business now that these congressmen consider them as heavy donors, as heavy constituents. I call them heavy. I don't know what they call them. Big money people. And the healthcare industry, the pharmaceutical industry, the insurance industry. Did you know that insurance companies can't go out of business? Did you know that? If an insurance company is crashing, doesn't have business, it has to be absorbed by another insurance company. That's the law. I didn't even know. I just found that out a couple of years ago. So these are monopolies of there's, you know, like, for instance, when it comes to healthcare, there's only, I don't know, 4 or 5 very large hospital companies that run the majority. Presbyterian is one of those. A huge money-making industry. And, of course, these people in the Republican Democratic parties, they're not going to screw those people over. I don't know whether Obamacare, because I never really, to tell you the truth, bothered to know as much as I probably should have about Obamacare. I do know, though, from being a veteran and looking at the VA and looking at other countries and states when they've tried to socialize medicine, that could it be done? Of course it could be done in a perfect world. But we don't live in a perfect world. We live in a republic and a capitalist system. And what happens is when you monetize healthcare and when you make that such big money, you're not going to get anything significantly done when it comes to regulations, because by and large, the congressmen and the senators, the state and federal, all of them, they're all corrupt and padding their own pockets and staying in politics as a career instead of a position of management of the country and keeping the country on track. That's not what they're concerned about. So basically, that's a long explanation for what I feel. And you can see I'm not as passionate about healthcare as I'm passionate about the manipulation of particular things in our lives that impact us on a daily basis. Healthcare, guns, being able to defend yourself, the manipulation of statistics, when it comes to gun violence or violence in general by the politicized FBI and DOJ. All these things, it really bothers me. And I think that when we get down to the gist of healthcare issues, it's not any different than what Jimmy Kimmel's now crying about, which is the gun rights stuff. And I think that Jimmy Kimmel, man, I wish this would get to you, because I respected you as a comedian. I respect you as a father. But I don't give two craps about you as a nighttime crybaby that continuously finds politicized things to talk about. Healthcare was one, but I'm showing you that I'm eye to eye with you on that. But Jimmy Kimmel, you and the rest of Hollywood and people that get your security provided for you, some of them armed, guarantee you at the studios where you're at, there's armed security or cops out there. The rest of the country doesn't have that. The rest of rural America, I know somebody that lives in Pennsylvania, and they're in the middle of nowhere out there, right? In order to get an ambulance there, if they have a major incident, they're looking at 30 minutes or more, right, just for an ambulance. So you can imagine rural areas in Arizona where there's long stretches of nothing. In Arkansas, where I'm from, if you have something happen, a robbery or something like that, which it didn't used to be the case, but now, you know, because of methamphetamine and drugs and all these types of things, crime has increased in the rural areas as well. It may take not 5 minutes, it may take 30 minutes for a cop to get there. And in the cases, I mean, there's been cases where cops have been taken down by a criminal, and then that criminal was shot by an armed citizen that saw what was going on and saved the law enforcement officer's life. The point of this is, Jimmy Kimmel, you need to stick to comedy. And if you got a gripe about healthcare, I get it. But it's like a one-shot deal, okay? Healthcare, it's your kid. We understand your tears. Don't come on television and start crying about gun rights. Same thing with Conan O'Brien. Same thing with all the rest of these people. Obviously, you don't understand the Second Amendment. Obviously, you don't understand that this week, when this individual, Sunday night, I guess is when this all occurred. I'm trying to, my brain's, yeah, Sunday night, when this individual went and shot all these people in Las Vegas. The same night that happened, there were literally millions of legal guns in this country owned by law-abiding citizens. And they didn't kill a single person. They didn't try to overthrow the government. They didn't try to suppress their weapons, Hillary Clinton, so they could go out and, you know, systematically kill people. That's not happening. It's American citizens exercising their rights to have a weapon, to guard themselves, protect themselves, and ultimately be able to stand up somewhat to a tyrannical government. Now, that is what the Second Amendment is all about. And the manipulation of the statistics, the manipulation of the incidents that occur, the manipulation of the emotion by the press, by people like Jimmy Kimmel, who sheds tears like John Boehner. It just pisses me off. I'm not going to lie. And I'm just as passionate as Jimmy Kimmel was about his child's real problem and the way that what I believe corrupt congressmen and senators play around with this healthcare stuff along with these big businesses. I am just as passionate and just as ferociously dedicated to defending the Second Amendment and the ability of the American population to empower themselves, to take care of themselves, and to develop into the total person that the Constitution and the rights therein allow us to do. So don't come out there, Jimmy Kimmel, crying about every single thing, because you're looking foolish now. You're looking foolish. You cried, and people were brought to tears when you cried about your child. We understood that. But then you turn around and you get teary-eyed, you have an emotional outburst about this, about that. It gets weaker every time you do this. You're not a power hitter, Jimmy Kimmel. You're a comedian that got a show. All right, I know lots of comedians. You're somebody who is a funny guy. I get it. but you don't know guns. Obviously, you don't understand the reality of the world that you live in and the rest of us live in and how different those are. We don't get car rides to work. We don't have people surrounding us to keep people that we don't want or might be dangerous from getting close to us. We don't have that. We live in the real world. We have to protect ourselves. We don't have somebody cook our food for us all the time. We cook it ourselves. We go shopping ourselves. And so we don't need you using your platform and coming out crying every time you don't like something because it's gotten cheesy, quite frankly. And it's going to get to a point where we're not even going to find you funny. We're going to turn you off, turn the TV off, and you're going to be relegated to the Chelsea Handler side of comedy where nobody cares about you. Heaven forbid you go out and do a sex tape to try to get famous again. Idiots. It's the truth. If you feel strongly about something, I get it. I get it. But there comes a time when you've got to realize your place in the world, and if you feel passionate about this thing that's real, you shouldn't turn around and give your, make sure that I'm still airing here. I am on Twitter. Facebook looks like it might be froze. You shouldn't go out and then show the same emotion for things that are just politically charged, and that's the only reason why you're doing it, because it's politically charged. That ain't going to work. Now, I wasn't going to come right out and do that first, but why is my Facebook frozen? There it goes. Okay. Way to go, Facebook. Froze my show, dropped 100 people. Oh, well. It is what it is. So, you know, here's the thing. The other thing about Jimmy Kimmel and all the rest of these people, and I've talked about this last week with Facebook. You know, if you're conservative in this country, right, and you have an opinion, I think it's clearly evident. Whoop, didn't mean to do that. I think it's clearly evident now. Man, there's all kinds of stuff going off. It's clearly evident that there's a double standard, first of all. It's clearly evident that I'm so happy that this CBS executive jerk, females can be jerks too. I'm so happy that she got fired. Because, and there's another comedian, I'm not even going to say her name, she comes out and says some kind of ridiculous stuff about, because this was a country music concert. I can guarantee you, they're saying now, they're reporting that this individual actually targeted a rap, or not targeted, we don't know what he targeted. He was going to try to check in the same hotel the week before, or 2 weeks before, when there was a rap concert going on. What do you think the media would have been saying if that was the case? White guy with a beard, older guy, and shot up a rap concert. I can guarantee you, folks, white supremacist, militia guy, take the guns away because they're all going to get guns and kill people. They would have said all the same stuff, and Jimmy Kimmel probably would have been crying because he would have been calling the guy a neo-Nazi, all right? But this guy shot up a country music concert, so they can't go down with that narrative. So they're going to go to the narrative that it's strictly people shouldn't have these guns, right? People shouldn't be able to get a gun that can be turned into an automatic weapon. Listen, I hate to tell you this, but basically nearly every weapon that is magazine fed can be turned into an automatic weapon. You can even take a Glock pistol, take a long 30-round magazine, you manipulate it and do some stuff inside, and you can turn it into a fully auto gun. Those things are always going to be there. As I said today on Bill O'Reilly's podcast, and I've said on this show many, many times, once a gun was invented, there will always be guns in the hands of bad people. You can take them all away from good people. They will always be there in the hands of bad people. Always. You can't do it. It's been like that through history with any specific type of weapon. You build a bigger, better sword, and then it becomes cheap enough for people to get it. This is way back when, I'm just assuming. And then you try to outlaw that sword. Well, the black market's going to go, and people are still going to be churning that out. So, getting back to Jimmy Kimmel. The fact is, folks, I've just had it up to here with the Jimmy Kimmel types that come out and say something that you get behind and you say, listen, I understand he's a father. He's got a legitimate complaint. I don't trust politicians either. And then he's got to come out, insult Trump in the same breath, and then go on now to trying to attack the Second Amendment and crying about that. It's gotten to a point where it's actually insulting to the American public, because do they think that we're that stupid that we're going to buy off on his tears this week and buy off on his tears next week and buy off on his tears or something else? What's he going to be crying about next? I mean, it's going to be something conservative. It'll never be something liberal. It won't be because there's too many guns in Hollywood. Jimmy Kimmel's not going to cry about that. He's probably going to cry about the fact that I don't know, something about churches on Sunday causing too much traffic, or I don't know. That we shouldn't be able to say, if we don't like Jimmy Kimmel, we shouldn't be able to say that. He'll go cry about that. The point is, shut up, Jimmy Kimmel. You had your chance. You made your point about your kid. We got it. Now you just look stupid. And I even challenge you, Jimmy. I can tell you one thing. I know that little thing that you said about the congressman or whatever that you would, you're not going to bring that heat on me. I can guarantee you that. We'll meet up the same place. You ain't bringing no heat on me. You'll lose that game. But what I will tell you, Jimmy Kimmel, is if you ever want to go shooting, I'll take you shooting. If you ever want to go through a shoot, don't shoot scenario so you understand about cops. If you ever want to go do something where I'll take you to the inner city, I'll take you to East New York. We'll go to Compton. We'll drive around. We'll get some gang members to talk to you. And you'll find out why people in Chicago should have guns legally. Law-abiding citizens. I'll take you to the rural area. All right? Well, I was going to say, we'll break your leg. We're not going to break your leg. We'll take you to a rural area, and we'll call law enforcement on a random night, and let's see how long it takes them to get there. Rest of America does not live like you. And the rest of America needs their weapons. They were promised their weapons. God granted those rights for us to be protected and to protect ourselves. The rest of the American citizenry does not rely on law enforcement to protect them, because law enforcement, as we saw in Vegas, cannot protect you. Law enforcement and their titles that they give themselves, and I was a cop, it's not to protect and serve. It's to protect, sometimes be there when things happen, but most often respond and serve. That's the truth. Ultimately, this citizenry has been duped into believing that everything they need is going to be taken care of for them from a national security or a local security standpoint, and that is not true. Security, personal protection for the average American is up to them, and it's up to them to learn how to protect themselves. If they don't, it's their fault. If they live under the illusion that they're going to be taken care of, and they're in a rural area and they just moved there, and they think, oh, if somebody breaks into my place, we're going to call the cops like we did in New York City, and they're going to be there that fast. Folks, they're not going to be there that fast. If you think I'm going to get choked and you're not going to come up with some kind of a plan on how to get yourself unchoked, and you live in a rural area in Missouri, you're going to die. Because it may take 30 minutes or more for an ambulance to get to you. It's not like New York City. You can't walk out my front door and my neighbor's door they're probably hearing me talk. I have my studio in my apartment. They're probably hearing me talk. It's not like that in the rest of the country. Whether it's safety or security, Jimmy Kimmel, Hollywood, liberals that live in cities, it's not like that in the rest of the world. We live under a different veil of protection. We live under a different veil of safety. And that veil is personal responsibility in protecting yourself and making sure that you are safe and secure. So don't bring this nonsense, Hillary Clinton. She's just like Tom Daschle after 9/11. Everything was kind of like, let's mourn, let's do what we got to do. And then here comes Tom Daschle, politics amuck, and then everything just went downhill after that. That's why Tom Daschle never won again. Hillary Clinton showed her true colors after this Sunday night's event of these 50, what are we up to, 59 people being killed, where she wants to talk about suppressors. The guy didn't even use a suppressor. It didn't have anything to do with what happened. In fact, I'll tell Hillary, I'll say the same thing to you. Shut up. Do us all a favor, okay? I tend to just ignore narcissists and stay away from psychopaths. I mean, I have a degree in psychology, all right, and a degree in political science. I know crazy people when I see them, trust me. Hillary Clinton needs to shut up and go away. And if you're liberal and if you're a Facebook worker and you're seeing this, oh, we got to monitor, we got to freaking, put a kibosh on this show, let me tell you something. You need to wake up and realize the same thing. Any politician that comes out after a shooting, I don't care if they're on the Republican or Democratic Party, and any celebrity, anybody that comes out after a shooting and a tragic event like this, and they politicize it by talking about nonsense, you, the American public, should distance yourself from them. Turn off Jimmy Kimmel. Get away from Hillary Clinton. Don't buy her book. Don't show up when she speaks. I don't care if you're liberal as they come. There's better people out there. I don't care. I don't mind having a debate with somebody who's liberal, because ultimately what it comes down to is, are you talking about what's effective, or are you just talking about the fact that it's not a liberal way to fix things? I'll win that debate every time. But if you're liberal and you have an effective solution for something, heck, I'm willing to listen. But you need to distance yourself from the likes of Hillary Clinton and any of these other politicians that politicize these things, whether it be health care, whether it be gun control, and the same thing with these idiotic Hollywood individuals who say all this nonsense about gun control and then go out and make movies where they kill everybody, where they kill cops. What has this world come to? What has this country come to? It's shocking to me when I have to sit back with my training and experience and my years of service and the people that I know that, listen, I've served this country, okay? I've bled for this country more in training than most people will ever bleed in their entire lives for their fellow American. But my service, the spectacular things I did in my career, don't even come close to some of the valiant things that other people have done. Listen to those people. I'll bring them on this show. Listen to them. If you want to know what's best for you in your life, don't take your information from Jimmy Kimmel. Don't take your information from Hillary Clinton. Don't take your information from Paul Ryan. Don't take your information from Lindsey Graham. And stop voting them in. Lindsey Graham, how does he still win? How did John McCain continue to win? What's wrong with you in Arizona? Bernie Sanders, that is the most screwed up state. They're big on guns, yet they hire Bernie Sanders every time he's up for re-election. What is wrong with you? He is a socialist, right? And I don't know if anybody's told you this, but he's a communist. Bernie Sanders is a communist. I got to turn this light down. It's killing me. I'm going to have to yell at my producer later. Bernie Sanders is a communist. Hillary Clinton's a communist. Paul Ryan could be a communist. He's definitely organized crime. A lot of people in Hollywood, listen, there's a lot going on in Hollywood and in politics. They work together in unison. Have you noticed that? Have you noticed that this individual that shot up the place in Las Vegas Sunday, that story is all over the place, as well as it should be. All this stuff, trying to figure out what's the background of this guy. How did he come up with this? How did he plan it? Why would he do this, right? All these people have died. 59 people died, 500 or more injured. But yet a politician can do something like Hillary Clinton to literally get our representative for our country, and 3 other individuals killed in Benghazi. You have Barack Obama, who pulls enough troops, just enough troops out of a war zone so that others get killed instead of going in there and kicking ass. You got President Bush before him that sends in and does the mother of all battles, right? Solved nothing, fixed nothing. His father did it before him. You got Clinton, Bill Clinton. We could have killed bin Laden years ago. For some strange reason, we didn't. We could have tamped down big time fundamental Islam and it spread around the world. But we didn't. Well, I'm saying we. He didn't. Bush 41 didn't. Bill Clinton didn't. Bush 43 didn't. Obama didn't. We'll see how Trump handles it. Trump's problem is he's got all the same generals that work for all those other guys working for him. I'm all over the place, it seems like, with this. But in my mind, it's perfectly the same. Jimmy Kimmel comes out and cries. These people go out and deceive. Jimmy Kimmel is deceiving with his tears. These politicians are liars, and they lie right to your face. And things don't get done with health care. Things don't get done with not gun control, crime control. Cleaning up the inner city. Nobody has... listen, I've been watching politics closely for many, many, many years. In the FBI, the one thing I used to ask when I was following people, I remember we were following, I can't go into detail about the case, but we were following somebody who potentially was a bank robber all through the inner city and the terrible areas in New York. And I kept asking myself, why isn't this place cleaned up? It has nothing to do with poverty. It has to do with personal responsibility. Whether you have money or not, if you have a place to live, why is the outside of your apartment building look like a hellhole? Why does the inside of your apartment? I've known cops that have worked not here in New York. I know cops that worked here in New York. It's the same story as cops that I know worked in the inner city in Little Rock, in LA. People where they go through in the inner city and they go into people's apartments where they sleep all day, they deal drugs all night, they get pregnant, they have kids. They walk into the, because they get a call, they go into the apartment, whatever it is, and there's dirty diapers with feces spread out all over the place. Where the kid goes to the bathroom in his diaper, they just take it off, leave it there. Listen, I grew up poor. We were never dirty. As a baby, I was never dirty. Poverty has nothing to do with this. The fact is, folks, man, I'm going all over the place with this, but the fact is, the Jimmy Kimmels of the world, these crocodile tears that this guy cries, it's all because of politics. He's pushing the agenda of the left. He's pushing the agenda of Hollywood. He's pushing the agenda of the media elite. And CNN and MSNBC and even Fox News to some extent and all these online publications, they go right along with it because they're a part of it. And then you got your politicians that further these things. They feed off these things like bottom feeders. And they don't do anything for you. They don't fix anything. There's no effective decisions that can be made. And so I bring it all the way back, even past Jimmy Kimmel, all the way back down to the average citizen that lives in this country and the poor citizens that live in this country that literally live and die by the lies that are told to them by these politicians and by the crocodile tears that Jimmy Kimmel and others like him cry. They vote people like John McCain or Paul Ryan or any Mayor Bill de Blasio here in New York, criminal, communist, dope smoker, weirdo. And they vote these people in the office because of the crocodile tears and the lies that they're sold. Their own ability to educate themselves is no different than mine or yours. And so we should be looking past these worthless crocodile tears that Jimmy Kimmel's crying, past the lies that the politicians are giving us, and just say, all you got to do, folks, is look at the past 20 years and say to yourself, is healthcare still a problem? If that baby in the inner city gets sick, is it going to be taken care of? Well, what about the middle class person, or not even middle class? What about the college graduate? What about the veteran? Get this, veterans that get out, that don't have a disability, they can't afford insurance. And as somebody who was an E5, that's an enlisted, somebody at the level of E5 that was enlisted in the military gets out and they don't have a career, they don't have college. You think that the military, that they're just, let's say they serve 5 years in the military, you think they're going to get benefits? They don't get benefits. They get nothing. Nothing. Unless they go completely impoverished, they're not going to get anything. So Jimmy Kimmel, go cry your crocodile tears about that. Pick some real issues. Leave the politics out of it. Sit down with people who are really affected by this stuff and stop this bull crap where you're trying to convince people that you're concerned about something when I guarantee you have no clue what those people went through that were in Vegas. No clue. You, Jimmy Kimmel, if I gave you the job of chief of police in Las Vegas, guarantee there's nothing that you could have done, even if you went through and passed laws and said, no more guns in Vegas. That individual still could have carried that out. He just got illegal guns, and hotels aren't going to search your bag. He could have done the same exact thing. Instead of coming up with these cockamamie, useless political narratives, the American people need to start insisting that the people that they vote into office have realistic solutions. Why aren't we talking about on television today about the lack of response by the Las Vegas Police Department? I'm not trying to place blame. I'm not saying they're at fault for this guy shooting, but I will tell you this. The response was tremendously bad. If I was in charge of that police department, I would have had, for any open air event, I would have snipers pre-positioned around that city, even if their only job was just to scope out if they can't reach out to that person with a weapon. At least they could scope out and say, you know, somebody on the ground says, we have gunfire. They start looking, yes, it's in that hotel right there. Send those people there. I'm hearing reports that there was a former or a military veteran that was 2 floors above the shooter in Vegas, and he was telling 911, the guy's 2 floors below me. Why are cops running to other hotels? That's not where the gunfire is coming from. And it took them an hour to get to this guy. It shouldn't be that way. There's ways to look outside the box. There's ways to do things. It's not even going to necessarily cost you money. But it all goes back to what I started talking about with Jimmy Kimmel. You got the crocodile tears of Hollywood. You got the lies of politicians. And you got the people that are in executive positions in government, whether it be local, state, or federal, that are inept and also ingrained with the same lies that the politicians are carrying out. And what happens? Policies don't change. It doesn't matter if you give every cop a long gun in Vegas. If their reaction to a shooting is being guided by people on the ground that can't see anything better than they can, you're not going to have a calculated and tactical response. What I saw with the police department in Vegas was what I saw in Vegas. Or excuse me, was what I saw in Orlando. Reaction, not action. What I saw in San Bernardino, when that shooting happened by Islamic fundamentalists, was action. And I do commend them. They went after them with a sheer ferocity and quickly hunted them down. And there are other cases, good and bad. Columbine is a perfect example of what's bad. But Orlando, Didn't do any better than Columbine. And I have to say, when it comes to this, knowing you're going to have an open-air concert with 30,000 people surrounded almost like in a valley, the valley of death, where you're surrounded by hotels where they're not going to be able to check on people. You're not going to be able to tell who's carrying what up into these hotels. You're not going to be able to tell if somebody is going to shoot because you can't read minds until the shooting starts. The only way you can target that and mitigate that threat is by putting snipers, just like you do in the stadiums and arenas, just like you do for the U.S. Open or for Yankees games or for the Super Bowl. They'll do it there. They won't do it in Vegas. That responsibility comes down to the chief of police and to the politicians of Las Vegas, of New York, of Chicago, of Miami, L.A., anywhere else they have these outdoor events. It's all about thinking outside the box. It's all about educating yourself. And the American people, listen, here I'll tell you this before we go move on. You can insist on these things. If you get 10,000 people that write to the chief of police in Las Vegas, just 10,000, and say, why don't we have snipers up, counter snipers up when there's an outdoor event like this so that we can counter this type of an assault? It's no different than on the ground where all the cops are at when the event's happening, and those are fun events to work. And I know because I used to run that division for the for the FBI here in New York, where I was head of all the special events management. Any type of event, I was the coordinator for our assets there. I liaisoned with the other law enforcement agencies, and I did threat assessments, wrote operations orders, and was always thinking outside the box to the kind of aggravation of my bosses. One of the guys who is one of the bigwigs for the Pennsylvania State Police was one of my bosses in the bureau when I was doing that job. I wish one day I'm going to give a speech and he's going to be there, and I'm going to tell this story. I'm not going to mention his name right now. But this guy calls me into his office. He was my assistant special agent in charge. He says, Jonathan, come on in and have a seat. I knew something was up at that point. He says, listen, you're doing a great job. You're doing things that nobody else has ever done with special events. And it's incredible. Stop doing it. You're pissing everybody off. Your job is to go there and shake hands and make sure we have a representative there in case something happens. That's what this guy told me. Let me tell you, folks, that was the beginning of the end of my career in the FBI. That was the day my eyes were wide open with the reality of what was going on in the FBI. So let's finish up this A block, or this warning order, and let me just bring this part of the show to a little bit of a conclusion here. The things that we see that happened on Sunday night in Las Vegas, the crocodile tears that Jimmy Kimmel cries, the lies that he cries about, that these politicians consistently go around spewing. All of these problems could be solved if the American citizenry was united, not by a political party, but by the quest to find effective solutions and the insistence that these solutions be pushed forward. And if the American people were unified behind the Constitution. And that is the problem. They say, I unify behind this political party. I identify with this politician. You're literally walking yourself off a cliff when you do that. Politicians lie, and Democratic and, and political parties, whether it be the DNC or the RNC, they are private companies that are not interested. Yes, they're private companies. I say it all the time in this show. They're not government entities. They are not interested in what's effective for you. They are interested in winning political races and furthering the military machine. I'm not talking about the DOD. I'm talking about the military complex where all these contractors make all this money. That's what they're furthering. They're furthering special interests like healthcare, where they can benefit their rich constituents and continue to keep their jobs. The Democratic and the Republican Party are basically no different than competing mafia families that control different areas of a city. That's all they are. And on the Democratic side, you have communism sprinkled in there. Well, probably more, a heaping amount of communism sprinkled in. It's up to you to unite, to insist, to protect the Constitution, insist that your rights are ensured, to make sure and say, listen, we want effective solutions. Why am I don't hold office. Why am I coming up with realistic solutions for problems like snipers on buildings in Las Vegas when they have a man who is hired for the sole purpose of managing the police department and ensuring that they have what they need, that they can think outside the box, that they can do their job effectively? That's his job. He's called the chief of police. In New York, it's called the commissioner. I don't even have that job. I don't get paid for this. So how is it that I can sit here and come up with solutions? So do you at home. So do you at home. And then nothing there. And this also leads to why the American citizenry is so untrustworthy when these investigations start. First off, this whole thing doesn't make sense to me at all with this guy who trained him, the weapons that he had, the explosives in the car. I personally have never, I don't remember, maybe I'm wrong here, but I don't remember in past history of any mass murderer having this much training. You're not going to pick up a weapon and shoot for effect fully auto. It's not going to happen. You can train with it and learn to do it. You're not going to be able to get explosive items. First of all, buying them will get you locked up. That in itself is a training process. And then making these things into a usable weapon takes training. I have my doubts of whether or not this guy learned all this stuff online. But the American people don't trust the investigation, and because they're looking at a police chief that didn't have the proper defenses to protect the people set up to begin with in a political environment where politicians lie and Hollywood cries about everything. They don't trust investigations. I don't trust investigations. This is starting to feel more and more to me like the JFK assassination, where all these dots here and there aren't adding up. And I think part of it has to do with the fact that law enforcement in this country is led by people who are incompetent and politically connected. Sounds just like the mob. And don't worry on Twitter, folks. Every night I get a list of people to block. And if you're a troll on there, you'll get blocked. So have fun, you little weirdos. You're going to get knocked off here before long. I'm not even paying attention to it right now. Don't pay them any attention. They won't be back on. I'll block them after the show. Everybody's always so good on Facebook. We're very well behaved. So let's go to the A block. I went a little bit long on the warning order, and I just want to talk about gun control. It's going to kind of go along with what we were just talking about there. But the reality is, I already talked about Jimmy Kimmel. The developments for this case so far, you know, we look at the pictures of the weapons that this guy was using. Now, fully auto with a bipod, which he had, and it looks like he had an aim point on one or ACOG on those. That's going to help this individual aim better. It might be easier for him to go full auto, but still. Extender mags, going fully auto, changing this weapon to fully auto. I just think that the way the guy set up cameras. Why set up cameras? Set up cameras outside, okay, I get that, because he's wanting to watch for the response that may be coming. But cameras on the inside, I want to know, is there somebody else that was watching this, that was directing this? Why wouldn't you ask that question? Because he doesn't have brown skin and he's not, he didn't scream Allah Akbar, so you automatically think that there's no way that he would have anything to do with Islam? I, as an investigator, would never think that way. If there's cameras on the inside, potentially somebody is guiding that attack. Potentially. And overwatching it. Is he a leftist? Is he a part of Antifa? I've heard that the guy was a Trump hater. I want to know. Let the Americans know. Why? Because we need to realize if there's that big of a threat. We know a congressman was an assassination attempt against him, targeting primarily the Republicans in that attack in Washington, D.C. We know that cops were killed in Dallas by a Black Lives Matter member. We know the same thing happened in Louisiana by another Black Lives Matter communist. We need to know if we just got hit by another leftist, because that's a huge deal. I don't know if we'll ever find out these things. And yes, Roxanne, I'm still not clear if there was more than one shooter. I'm just not. Are there connecting rooms? Were there occupants in the other rooms? Are there fingerprints anywhere in there other than this guy's? If they find those things, the American public needs to know it quickly, because unless there's investigative reasons to keep it like they're on the trail of somebody, I get it. But the American people need to know if there's another shooter, and so potentially they could help identify it, but also know that there's people out there that are planning these types of things. Let's go to the A block, and we'll talk about gun control. How many of you are prepared for an incident like this? Get my new book, Sheep No More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival, and I will teach you to think like an attacker so you can truly defend yourself. Don't just react, act. Available for pre-order now on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Sheep No More. Get it. All right, I'm going to see that it looked like there might be a, I don't know if this is over with yet, but there might be a press conference going on. Not working. Let's see here. It might have already happened. And I'm not seeing it. Update. Okay. Here's another wackadoo. Professor blames Las Vegas shooting on narrative of white victimization. What the heck is wrong with people? The only victimization he needs is a severe ass beating for saying something that stupid. So, let's just talk for a second about gun control, okay? Gun control is very important in this country. I believe in gun control. I believe that if you own a weapon, you should know how to control that gun. The fact is, folks, here's the problem we have in this country. We're given a right to protect ourselves that we need, especially in this day and age. But people are never taught the importance of the guns. We're never taught how to use them in schools. Used to be taken away from schools for political reasons. I didn't hear of the reason, people used to carry their shotguns on their gun rack in their trucks to school and then go hunting afterwards, or as Dave Robinson talked about, had the guns and would put them in their lockers at school. This wasn't that long ago in West Virginia. We have certain rights and certain expectations that the states and that the federal government have upon us. Jury duty is one of those things. We're never taught in class. There's no class called jury duty. Why not? If the legal system was so perfect in this country, why aren't we training people to be better jurors? Why don't we have jury duty class in a high school and in college? Why not make it to where if you go through, if you dropped out of school and you're getting your GED, it should be a part of the curriculum. And then before you go there, or when you go there, instead of listening to this nonsense of all these, I've been let out of jury duty when I was an FBI agent. It's a suck factor. I get it, but perhaps it would be easier if it was something that you were going to do, that there was assistance that could be pushed out a little bit with a little bit more like monetary assistance for parents that are working or whatever. But how about a course that you go to? If you're going to serve on jury duty, you got to sit for, I don't know, at least an hour in a course that refreshes you on how juries work, how attorneys manipulate the truth, and how judges can be faulty. How about that? That's called empowering the people. How about with our Second Amendment? How about we have classes in school about being a responsible gun owner? Why you might want to own one gun versus the other? How does a gun work? What are the ramifications if you pull a gun out and use it and you're not justified? What are the justified places where you can use a weapon in this country? Why isn't there a course on that? You don't drive a car. You don't get a driver's license with a car without going through a test, and you don't pass that test unless you study for your license. Why then do we allow people the Second Amendment without constructively building people to be responsible gun owners and understanding the importance of the Second Amendment? That's called effective thinking, and I don't get it. I don't understand why in this world we don't do things this way. The First Amendment, freedom of speech. Why don't we have a course in high school and in college that teaches you could even do this in junior high and elementary. Could be a repeating course on the importance of the freedom of speech, or how about all our constitutional rights? But freedom of speech, and the fact the American public needs to realize that the press is not, the press as we know it is not connected to the First Amendment. The press as we know it today is an entertainment industry, and they are also a political propaganda machine. They are not what the founding fathers intended when they were talking about freedom of speech. And freedom of the press had to do with the printing press, not whether or not you could manipulate information and put it in a newspaper for the purpose of supporting your candidate. Hold on, I may have to go get this dog. Stand by 1 second. I get it. My dog wants to say hello to everybody. Don't you growl at me, boy. All right, he wants to say hi. Sorry I interrupt the show for this, but there's no... when he says he wants to say hi, I got to let him say hi. 17 years old. Massive muscles, incredibly vicious. He's a dire wolf from Game of Thrones. I gotta shake him to wake him up every now and then. All right, get out of here. Go on, or just sit down right there. Whatever you're gonna do. Crusty old dog. All right. So where was I? When it comes to the Second Amendment and how these politicians jump on board with this nonsense, every time we have this type of an attack in this country, I'll just say this. You look at Chicago, where legal guns are pretty much banned. They have the highest murder rate in this country. I mean, it's out of control there. As Bill O'Reilly talked about today when I was on his show and he did his opening monologue, and I suggest if you haven't subscribed to his website that you do that, and I'm going to have some information on how you do that here in the next couple days. But he was talking about how 59 people were killed Sunday in Vegas. But this weekend in Chicago, 57 people were killed. 57 people. That's crazy. But you're not hearing anything about that. You're not going to hear anything about those people are inconsequential to what the politicians want. And here's the biggest thing is those people were killed primarily in black-on-black crime, primarily with illegal weapons, and primarily drug or gang-related. You want to control some guns, control the illegal movement of guns. Barack Obama and Eric Holder did not help that by who knows what else they did. We know that Fast and Furious happened because it blew up in their face. What else did these two knuckleheads do? I know that Barack Obama pardoned 4 cartel members that were from Mexico that were doing life sentences, and he let those guys go. Why would you do that? Makes no sense. But the Second Amendment and gun rights, the Second Amendment exists for a reason, as I went over at the beginning of the show. This whole nonsense of gun rights, and they chip away at this, folks. And here's what I don't want to happen when it comes to these gun rights. When something like this happens, and the question that was posed to me today by Bill O'Reilly was, does somebody need to own 20 guns? It's not and I told him it's not a matter of need. It's a matter of it's your right. It's your right to own 20 weapons. And I'll tell you, there's literally tens of thousands of people that own multiple guns in their homes. 10 or more guns. They didn't kill anybody, and they will die at a ripe old age without ever having killed anyone. It's not the number of guns that you have that's going to stop gun violence. It's not the suppressors and outlawing those that's going to stop gun violence. Most people are not killed by a gun with a suppressor. And I hate to tell you, Hillary, idiot Clinton, but suppressors don't make it silent, okay? The silencer thing that Hollywood uses, it's not what it is. It's a suppressor, so it's not as loud. But that's not going to solve any crimes. Making suppressors out loud, or making suppressors illegal and outlawed is only going to stop the good people from getting them. They're still going to be in the hands of bad people, just like guns. But here's my fear, and I'll leave you with this. It's the chipping away of these constitutional rights that you have to watch out for. I look at, and having studied in psychology, I know this is going to be a weird analogy for people, but it's a true analogy, and it's something that you should listen to, okay? When it comes to pornography, for instance, there is, and I know there's a lot of veterans that watch this show, so I know I just got their attention. So when it comes to pornography, there is a degradation scale where you will be led into, it's the same thing with drug abuse, right? You're led into something that is this bad. And then after a while, your senses become deadened to that. And so then you find this, and they become deadened to that, and then become this. And you go deeper and deeper into the hole, whether it be pornography that really does draw on the inner passions and desires of a person, but turns them dark, or whether it be drug abuse, where that person will smoke a little weed, and then they're at a party, they're drunk, they smoked a little weed, and somebody says, "Here, just try this pill. Listen, it's not going to hurt you. It's going to make you feel good." And the person says, "You sure it's not going to hurt me?" "No, it's not going to hurt you." Say, "Take the pill." That pill could be instantly addictive if it's ecstasy laced with methamphetamine, or it could be methamphetamine. They don't know. You're instantly addicted now. So there's a rabbit hole that people chase things down that is very, very dangerous. Now, where am I going with this with gun violence? Well, it's the same thing when you look at Nickelodeon, and then you're introduced to MTV, and then you're introduced to CNN as you get older. The Weather Channel, I guess, is kind of out there a little bit, but even they are propagandists. They put a Weather Channel guy in between two buildings where the wind's blowing, 100 miles an hour, and as soon as they step around the corner, there's no wind. It's just that they were in a wind tunnel. They pump up every single hurricane and tornado as though it's going to be a life-altering event, which it typically is not. So when it comes to my fear with gun control is that you are slowly being indoctrinated and things are being chipped away where you're going to accept this, and then you'll accept a little bit more, and then you'll accept a little bit more control. And the control gets, it's not that it gets deeper, it's that it gets gradually deeper. Okay, I'm willing to give up. I'd never use a suppressor, so I'm going to go ahead and say, okay. I'm not saying me. I love suppressors. I'd love to have a suppressor. I'd love to have multiple M4s. I'd like to have a ton of ammunition. I would like to have a cabin in the woods where I could set it up so I'm well protected in case anything happens. I'm trained like that. I like that feeling. I like being secure, and I like having my own fortress, not because I'm going to do anything to hurt anybody, but because it's my right to be secure, and damn it, I want to be secure. And if my buddies want to come over and shoot, we go shoot. Now, unfortunately, I live in Manhattan, and that ain't the case. I'm like every other poor individual that lives here, and I'm saying poor, but every other individual that lives here. We're at the behest of whether or not the cops can get here and rescue us. I mean, listen, anybody wants to do anything to me, it's going to be a fight. But it's not like the country where I can have a fortress. You're not going to have a fortress in New York City. My fear with gun control is this. Just like the pornography, just like the drugs, just like television where it's, a little bit's introduced to you here, your morality goes down there. And hold on a second. Look who's back. What do you want? Get out of here. Whether it's morality or whatever it is, if you allow the gun right activists to do their dirty work, they are going to chip away at little bits of your constitutional rights until they got you. And the same thing goes with your First Amendment rights. You can't say this because it's mean. Well, I'm sorry. If I say something that's mean, then punch me in the face. That's what I get. But don't restrict my constitutional rights to say it. The Founding Fathers didn't make the First Amendment so that we could insult other people. But they did make it so that we could speak the truth and stand up against a tyrannical government without fear of being oppressed for that speech. That's why that exists. The unfortunate ramifications of that also come along where you can say mean things and, the government can't stop it. It doesn't mean that you can't get punched in the face for saying it. Your constitutional rights do not protect you from that. But it does protect you from the government coming in and saying, you can't write an op-ed talking about how much you don't like the president or how much you don't like this congressman or senator. That's what it protects you from. The Second Amendment does not protect you from psychopathic killers. It doesn't. The Second Amendment is not going to protect you from Islamic jihadists. The Second Amendment protects you from a tyrannical government, and it protects you from not being able to protect yourself. That's what the Second Amendment does. The Second Amendment doesn't say, give this man a gun, issue it to him so that he can protect himself. It doesn't say that. You have the right to have a weapon powerful enough to protect you equally from the country that governs you. And the government should not be able to do anything about that. And it also gives you the right to take your own protection in your own hands. Whether it be one gun or 20. It's your right how you decide to protect yourself. That's what the Second Amendment gives you. But if you allow people to chip away at it, whether it be the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, or any of the others, what happens? They're going to say, no, listen, you can't say mean things to people. Even though you shouldn't, the Second Amendment, or excuse me, the First Amendment, cannot and should not tell you what you can say about any specific group of people at any time. Now, burning the flag, in my opinion, is not is speech. That is an action. I think that is a mistake that the Supreme Court made, and we have been suffering because of that bad decision. I don't think protesting that turns into rioting or protesting to further a political narrative on behalf of a political party is freedom of speech. I believe that is organized propaganda, and that is an action. And I think we should look closely at that. But it's a fine line when we say, after the courts have deemed something freedom of speech, it's a fine line to go back and try to change those things. And that, folks, is we're all in this tonight. You have to be very careful at the chipping away of our Second Amendment. You have to be very careful at the court systems chipping away. The activists, Hollywood, the Jimmy Kimmels, the congressmen, the senators, the mayors, the chiefs of police, the sheriffs, at chopping away from your Second Amendment so that you can protect yourself and you can be empowered. You have to be careful. You have to watch it. You have to stay vigilant and not let it happen. And you yourself cannot stop it in this country that's too big. But you can join the NRA, for instance. You can get together with your local citizens. If you own a shooting range and develop a once a month or once a quarter or biannually where people come out, they shoot at your range and they sit around and talk about their Second Amendment and how it's being violated and what you all are going to do together. It's that simple. It's not Friday, but this is water. It's not moonshine. I wish it was. Don't worry. I'm gonna keep you updated as stuff comes out about this this shooting. But to be honest with you, this is one of those news days. There's a lot of stuff in the news, but Kim Jong-il is still a problem. He's threatens to destroy Japan. Obama, I'm waiting to talk more about Menendez and that trial because there's a lot of Obama officials that are testifying in that. A pro-life congressman, this is off of FoxNews.com, reportedly asked his girlfriend to get an abortion. Idiot. Now they're saying up to 34 people are dead in Puerto Rico. Look, here's something I'm going to say before I go, and I may catch fire for this, but here's the deal. Puerto Rico, whether people want to believe, I lived in Puerto Rico for a while, is on the verge of being a third world country. It's not quite third world like you would see in Honduras, but a lot of Puerto Rico is very poor. And it's not Houston, it's not Louisiana, it's not Florida. If a hurricane comes through and destroys portions of Puerto Rico, you're not going to see people that live in poverty like that, in barrios, and that live that are that impoverished. You're not going to see them putting their stuff on the sidewalk and waiting for a government check so that, because they didn't have flood insurance, so they can redo their home or so they can go buy new furniture. That's not how they live. They're going to sweep out their room that they live in, and they're going to go on with life. That's the way it works in impoverished countries. In Puerto Rico, there's not that many people in there. I think 2 million, maybe a little more. There's no reason Puerto Rico should be that impoverished, except for the fact of everything we've talked about tonight. Criminal politicians, the criminal mayor, the criminal union leaders and unions that won't allow the stuff to be distributed because they want their take, like mafia people. There is corruption in Puerto Rico like crazy. There is violence, and there are drugs, and there is crime. And that was before the hurricane. So that's one of the reasons why things in Puerto Rico are not moving fast, because it's an impoverished nation with a lot of crime, and things just don't move like they do in Houston, where you have good, honest, hardworking people showing up to help other good, hardworking American people that want to get back to life. And that's the truth. It's not a political statement. It's reality. I've been down there. Let's go to the Truth Zone. Great numbers tonight, folks. Stand by 1 second here. No, I'm not going to grab the dog again. Let's do the Truth Zone. How many of you are prepared for an incident like this? Get my new book, Sheep No More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival, and I will teach you to think like an attacker so you can truly defend yourself. Don't just react, act. Available for pre-order now on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Sheep No More. Get it. I got to make the end of that commercial longer because you always see my face pop up. Listen, great show. You know, I don't always have guests on this show, for those of you that maybe tune in for the first time. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. Tonight I didn't feel it was necessary to have guests. I could have gone a lot longer, but I see the numbers and I see when they start to fall. Let me just summarize this. Tonight, as I've done before, I'm giving everybody a call to arms. I'm not talking about go pick up your gun. I'm talking about a call to action, really, is what I should say. If you were in Vegas when this went down, don't change the way you feel about guns if you're a pro-gun person. Psychopaths, terrorists, doesn't matter if they're leftist, black separatists, white supremacists, they're going to attack. The best thing that you can do is exploit your freedoms to their max. Learn to protect yourself. Identify, because you know in this world that there's going to be weapons. No matter where you go. I know people who've gone over and been caught up in a coup. I know people who've gone to other countries and been caught up in a terrorist attack. I've talked to people who were robbed at gunpoint in other countries. It's not just America. It is the evolution of the human population. When a gun was created, they'll always be in the hands of bad people. Always. Just like forks and spoons will be in the hands of hungry people once they were created, because they make the job that they want to do more effective. I want to eat, here's a spoon. I want to poke something, there's a fork. I want to kill, here's a gun. And bad people that want to kill will always seek to get those, and other bad people will always give them to them. If you want to cry about something, Jimmy Kimmel, if you want to stop something, Hillary Clinton, if you are an activist and you want to protect your community, do what it takes to empower the American citizenry. Cry about that, Jimmy Kimmel. Cry because your Democratic Party and the Republican establishment have literally crippled this citizenry in many places from being able to effectively protect themselves. You've lied so much that the citizenry just says, I give up. I'm not even going to try to know what is the truth anymore. And the American people have to insist on this stuff. Now you know why I always talk about unity being the most important thing. Dialogue and then unity. Through dialogue, you become united. And through unity, you can be prepared for these things. Whether it be helping each other out in an instant like this, or saying, I'm not going to let those people die. I'm going to jump on this person if it was down low and they were trying to attack. In Orlando, the person reloaded his weapon numerous times and nobody jumped on the guy. Why? Because this citizenry has failed to be empowered. They have failed to be united. They have failed to stand together. That's time. It's time for that to stop. I'm Jonathan Gilliam. Stand with me, be united, and come back here tomorrow night and every weeknight as we talk about these subjects and you and I become one. Remember, wherever I am, the truth has arrived. This is The Experts. Don't forget to pre-order the book Sheep No More, which you see scrolling across the screen right there. If you haven't pre-ordered it, pre-order it. It comes out December 12th, and you will want this book. It's going to be an easy book to read. It's going to give you insight on how attackers think. It's going to give you insight on what the reality of an attack actually is, and how you can take that knowledge and target yourself and build a target package on every sector of your life so you can truly defend against evil in this country. Also, as you see scroll across the screen, the GoFundMe page. This show is made possible through your donations. If you donate $50 or more, you're going to get a signed copy of the book. Stand with me. Right there you see it. GoFund.me/The Experts Roadshow. The more people donate to this, the bigger the show gets. And eventually it's going to go back out on the road with books. And I'll be coming to your town, hopefully. It's all about unity, folks. Isn't that right, Debbie Wasserman Schultz?
You said it.
Get out of here, Debbie. I'm Jonathan Gilliam. I'll see you tomorrow on The Experts. Hoo-yah! How many of you are prepared for an incident like this? Get my new book, Sheep No More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival, and I will teach you to think like an attacker so you can truly defend yourself. Don't just react, act. Available for pre-order now on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Sheep No More. Get it.